Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of your sources and extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight.
That's right.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into this really fascinating claim that one single year, 1959, basically changed everything about the modern world.
Yeah, sounds pretty bold, doesn't it?
It does. Our source material is Fred Kaplan's book, 1959, The Year Everything Changed. And, well, it paints this vivid picture of a world, right on the brink.
On the brink of both infinite possibilities
Yeah.
and instant annihilation. That's the core tension Kaplan talks about.
Exactly. And his central idea, which we're going to unpack today, is that in 59, this feeling took hold, that barriers were breaking down. Space, speed, time.
Right, and because those were falling, it felt like other barriers, societal ones, cultural ones, were suddenly ripe for transgressing.
Which ignited this incredible burst of creative energy.
But always with this kind of undercurrent of dread. Existential dread, really.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to show how these really shocking developments in culture, science, politics, all in this one year, how they laid the groundwork for, well, everything that came after.
Yeah, you're going to hear about some surprising connections, I think, across fields that seem totally separate, but it really felt like everything was changing, and people knew it.
Okay, so let's explore how 1959 sort of ripped the seams of daily life. Where should we start?
Well, let's dive into the cultural and artistic world first, because that's where you see some of the most visible barriers just getting shattered. Comedy actually became this really sharp tool.
Comedy, you mean like stand-up?
Yeah, exactly. It's maybe hard to picture now, but the 50s were pretty buttoned up. And then you had these guys they called sick comics, like Lenny Bruce, Mort Saul.
Right, sick comics. Why that label? What made them so, well, shocking?
Well, it wasn't just the jokes themselves, It was the rawness, the delivery. They were challenging polite society head on.
So taboo topics.
Oh, yeah. Race, religion, politics, sex, drugs. Stuff you just didn't talk about openly, certainly not with humor. Lenny Bruce, for instance, his delivery was almost like jazz.
Jazz? How so?
He used Yiddish slang, this kind of syncopated rhythm. Very unconventional. He had routines like Religions, Inc., which poked fun at TV evangelists, the Pope, even integration.
Wow. And another one, how to entertain colored people at parties.
Yeah, I mean, talk about direct satire. It just cut right through that white liberal discomfort with integration, exposing all the stereotypes. He was incredibly it's scandalous even for the time.
And Mort Saul. The source calls him jazz incarnate.
Right, because he'd improvise, riff on a theme, wander off, but always come back. He kept the beat, And his political stuff, going after Eisenhower, McCarthy, that was really new.
So the impact was pretty big then.
Huge. They were chipping away at censorship, making space for a more daring public conversation. Even though Bruce still got censored, sometimes there's that joke about Jewish burials.
Still, it feels like the culture was starting to breathe a little differently.
It really was. And that same spirit, that willingness to challenge things, it wasn't just on the comedy stage. You saw it powerfully in literature, too.
Ah, okay. So novels loosening up, using language differently.
Exactly. And tackling subjects that were off limits before. Grove Press, Barney Rossett, the owner, was key here, especially with Lady Chatterley's lover.
The uncensored version, right. That was a big legal fight.
A landmark case. Their lawyer, Charles Rembar, came up with this brilliant strategy. He argued the book had redeeming social importance.
Which countered the old standard that something had to be utterly without social importance to be considered obscene.
Precisely. And then there was another ruling, Kingsley International Pictures Corps v. Regents, which made a crucial distinction.
Between expression and conduct, right? Saying you can't just censor an idea because it's provocative.
Exactly. It was a major step for free speech. And you saw more controversy with William S. Burroughs' Naked Lunch, published in journals like Chicago Review and Big Table.
Burroughs. He had some pretty wild descriptions of his own work.
Oh, yeah. He called it a hallucinogenic projection of his junk-zapped brainwaves. Yeah. Saw himself as a cosmonaut of inner space. He wasn't just writing. He was trying to map consciousness itself.
So this wasn't just about dirty words. It was about the limits of art.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the Beat Generation was right in the thick of it. Jack Kerouac.
On the road, typed on that massive scroll.
Yeah, like 16 feet long. He called it spontaneous prosody. Just this stream of consciousness flow, like jazz improvisation on the page. No edits, just pure energy.
And Allen Ginsberg's Howl, that went to trial too, didn't it?
It did. Obscenity trial. These writers were pushing every boundary, content, and form. Norman Mailer was part of this too, exploring the psychic outlaw in essays like The White Negro.
Merging life and art. I read he initially dismissed Kerouac.
He did,
Uh,
but then apparently had this moment of realization like, oh shit, this guy's done it. He saw Kerouac had captured something essential about the moment.
it feels like more than just literature. It was a whole cultural shift, a kind of hip versus square thing.
Totally. It was a challenge to decorum, to the status quo. And this ferment, this energy, it spilled over into music in a huge way.
Okay, music. This is where you really hear the change. 1959, Berry Gordy, Motown.
In his garage, with $800 borrowed money. It's incredible.
Just $800, and then they have this hit, Money. That's what I want.
Right. Number 2 on the R&B charts.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just a hit song. It was the sound, that unique jazz-infused R&B.
The Funk Brothers.
The incredible Funk Brothers. That sound shaped so much of what came next.
Yeah.
Baby boomer rock and roll, the Beatles.
Yeah.
You can trace it back there. It was fresh, infectious.
A completely new sound. And then at the other end of the spectrum, in jazz.
You had Ornette Coleman. Him and his quartet were doing something radical.
Free jazz.
Free jazz, meaning
Basically playing without a net,
Yeah.
improvising without relying on the usual chord progressions. It was about pure expression, following musical instinct wherever it led. Raw, challenging.
I bet there was resistance to that.
Oh, definitely. Miles Davis himself at first said Coleman was all screwed up inside. Pretty harsh.
Wow. But it had an influence.
A profound one. Later, Miles started playing much more free himself, and John Coltrane actually sought out lessons from Coleman. It pushed jazz into entirely new territory.
So it's like another example of breaking down structures, improvising without a safety net.
Exactly. It mirrored that cultural fearlessness, that willingness to leap into the unknown.
And jazz was crossing other barriers too, right? Like diplomacy.
Yeah, Dizzy Gillespie did those State Department goodwill tours, using jazz as a cultural bridge during the Cold War.
And Louis Armstrong. He made that really powerful statement about Little Rock.
He did. Blasting Eisenhower for inaction, saying the government can go to hell, a colored man hasn't got any country. That shocked a lot of people.
But it must have resonated with younger musicians, showing art could be protest.
Absolutely. But it also highlights the tension. Because even as these breakthroughs happened, the everyday reality of racism was brutal. Miles Davis getting beaten by police outside Birdland in '59.
A stark reminder, yeah.
A very stark reminder. And this theme of blurring boundaries, challenging norms, it was happening in visual art and film too.
Right. Frank Lloyd Wright's Guggenheim Museum opened that year. That building itself was a statement.
Totally unconventional.
Yeah.
1 million visitors in the first year, people were fascinated. And then MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, had that show, 16 Americans.
With Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns?
Yeah, Rauschenberg's combines, part painting, part sculpture. And Johns with his flags and targets. Their whole aim was explicit. Blur the line between art and life.
Taking art off the pedestal.
Exactly. You see the influence of earlier artists like Duchamp with his ready-mades, everyday objects presented as art, and John Cage's ideas about embracing everyday sounds and experiences.
Which leads to happenings.
Alan Capro's happenings, yeah.
Yeah.
Performance art, moving out of galleries into the streets, sometimes involving the audience directly. It's kind of the precursor to flash mobs, really.
Integrating art into public space, making it dynamic.
And photography, too. Robert Frank's book, The Americans, came out in the U.S. edition in '59.
That wasn't the idealized picture of America, was it?
Not at all. It was raw. Showed alienation, hypocrisy, prejudice. A stark contrast to the sort of sanitized image in popular exhibitions like The Family of Man. He showed the cracks.
In film. You mentioned independent film taking root.
John Cassavetes' Shadows. Shot spontaneously. 16mm raw energy. Totally unlike slick Hollywood stuff.
And that influenced other filmmakers.
Big time. Martin Scorsese saw it as a student and said it made him realize cinema could be made anywhere. You didn't need a huge studio.
And this was happening just as the French New Wave was hitting, the 400 blows, Breathless.
Exactly. Those films started arriving in the U.S., bringing serious themes, a different style, more realism, even sex and nudity you just didn't see in American movies then. It broadened horizons.
So culture is buzzing, breaking rules. But there's that darker side you mentioned, science and dread.
Yeah, the flip side of all this creative energy, the space age, becomes common language, right? But it's not just wonder.
Because the Soviets launched Lunik 1.
The first probe to escape Earth's gravity,
Right.
yeah. And they timed it with Mikoyan's visit to the U.S. It just amplified those fears of a missile gap.
So space exploration gets tangled up immediately with the arms race. Infinite possibilities, potential annihilation.
Right there. And then you have the really unsettling work of Herman Kahn at the Rand Corporation.
Thinking about the unthinkable.
Exactly, giving these long lectures, literally, on how to fight, survive, and win a nuclear war, calculating casualties from a moderate-sized attack.
And making those chillingly flippant remarks like, war orgasm. It sounds like Dr. Strangelove.
Well, Kaplan makes the direct connection. Kahn's work was a major inspiration for Kubrick's film. It captured that terrifying absurdity of trying to rationalize the end of the world.
God, that's dark. But there is a counterpoint, someone looking outwards with hope.
Yes, thankfully. Philip Morrison, a physicist who had worked on the atomic bomb, co-wrote an article in '59 proposing SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Why? What was the thinking?
His hope was profound, really. He thought if other intelligent civilizations existed and had survived their nuclear crises, maybe we could too. Finding them would offer renewed hope for our own future.
Wow. From the depths of nuclear fear to cosmic hope.
It's an incredible contrast. And funnily enough, Frank Drake's Project Ozma, the first actual search, had already started about 6 months before Morrison's article even came out.
No kidding, the search was already on.
The search was on. And this tension, possibility versus peril, it's also right there in the birth of the digital age.
Okay, the microchip. Jack Kilby, Texas Instruments, 1958, but shown publicly in '59.
Right, this tiny little piece of germanium. It solved what Kilby called the tyranny of numbers.
Meaning
Meaning the practical nightmare of wiring together millions or even just thousands of individual transistors, resistors, capacitors by hand for complex electronics. It was a huge bottleneck.
And the integrated circuit put all that onto one chip.
Essentially, yes. It collapsed the whole problem. Suddenly, complex circuits could be tiny and mass-produced. The potential was seen almost immediately.
Revolutionizing computers, rockets, missiles.
Satellites, yeah. But also, quite presciently, they predicted things like telephones, TVs, medical devices. They saw it coming.
And then IBM brought out the 1401 computer later that year.
Yeah, late '59.
Oh.
And it was way smaller, lighter, cheaper than the old behemoths like UNIVAC that filled entire rooms.
So you combine that more accessible computer with the power of the microchip.
And you get the launch pad for exponential growth, miniaturization, processing power. It's the quiet beginning of the digital world we live in now. You can't really overstate its importance.
Incredible. So technology and culture are exploding, but the political and social scene was just as charged, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, flicking that same dynamic, take Cold War diplomacy. You had Khrushchev's visit to the U.S. in September '59.
The first Soviet leader ever to visit. Huge deal.
Massive. Remember the kitchen debate with Nixon?
Yeah, arguing about wash machines and TVs in a model American kitchen.
Exactly, highlighting those differences in living standards. Khrushchev toured around, famously got annoyed he couldn't go to Disneyland.
Right, security reasons or something.
Yeah, but despite the initial friction, Kaplan notes he did seem to open up a bit, acknowledged American prosperity, even talking about Soviet disarmament. There was a thaw, maybe, a possibility of detente.
But it didn't last?
Nope. The U-2 incident in May 1960 shattered it. An American spy plane shot down over Russia. Eisenhower initially lied, then had to admit it.
And Khrushchev walked out of the Paris peace talks.
Angrily, detente collapsed. And Kaplan argues this directly contributed to the building of the Berlin Wall the next year, a major setback.
So global tensions ratchet up again. Meanwhile, what was happening with civil rights in the U.S.?
A definite rising tide in '59. You had the new Civil Rights Commission starting investigations into discrimination voting, housing, schools.
And Ella Baker was organizing voter registration drives with the SCLC.
Yes, the Crusade for Citizenship campaign, a strategic shift. But the resistance was intense.
Like George Wallace in Alabama impounding voter records.
Exactly. Or counties just destroying records every month so black citizens couldn't register. And schools. Mississippi and South Carolina basically repealed compulsory attendance laws to avoid integration. Arkansas let schools close down.
The Little Rock fight continued, too, with groups like STOP versus Cross.
Yeah, grassroots battles everywhere.
Yeah.
And individuals like Medgar Evers in Mississippi facing incredible danger just trying to register voters, documenting what he called Gestapo-like actions.
And the lynching of Mac Parker, that was '59, too.
Yes. Abducted from jail, murdered. It sent shockwaves, highlighting the sheer brutality people were up against.
Amidst all that, Martin Luther King Jr. goes to India.
February '59. To study Gandhi's methods, that trip was crucial, Kaplan argues, cementing nonviolent protests as the core strategy for the movement. It provided a powerful moral and tactical framework.
But there was another response emerging, too. Black nationalism.
Right, the other side of the coin, as Kaplan puts it. Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam, and Malcolm X gaining prominence. They were featured in that 1959 documentary, The Hate That Hate Produced.
Offering a message of black separatism, even supremacy.
Yes, as a direct response, they argued, to centuries of white hatred and oppression. It was a radically different vision for black liberation.
And then John Howard Griffin's experiment, Black Like Me.
An incredible story. A white man chemically darkening his skin to experience life as a black man in the segregated South. His book documented the visceral reality of racism, the hate stare, the daily humiliations.
It must have been a bombshell for white readers.
A deeply uncomfortable one, but essential. And Kaplan suggests this whole buildup, the protests, the hopes, the violence, the growing awareness, it all culminated and led directly to the first sit-ins in Greensboro in early 1960.
Sparked by the energy of 59.
Exactly, demonstrating this new power of spontaneous, nonviolent direct action.
And while all this is happening, another revolution, maybe quieter, was starting for women.
The pill. Indeed approved by the FDA at the very end of 1959.
After decades of work by Margaret Sanger and Catherine McCormick.
Decades. And the pharmaceutical company, G.D. Searle, marketed it quite cautiously. One of the key figures, Dr. John Rock, a Catholic doctor, even argued it was just a way to make the rhythm method more reliable.
Despite the church condemning it.
Right. But women adopted it incredibly quickly. Millions were taking it within a few years. It was transformative.
Giving women control over reproduction.
Which meant more control over their lives, their education, their careers. A fundamental shift in personal freedom, maybe less visible at first, but profound.
We also see new intellectual currents forming, like the New Left.
Yeah, thinkers starting to question the whole post-war consensus. C. Wright Mills's essay, Culture and Politics, The Fourth Epoch, came out in '59.
Arguing that old ideologies, liberalism, socialism, didn't really explain the modern world anymore.
Right, he felt rationality was often being used for manipulation, for tyranny. He hated the idea of the end of ideology, saw it as complacency.
And he called for a new movement.
An American New Left, focused on direct, nonviolent action. Kaplan says this directly inspired Tom Hayden and the SDS, Students for a Democratic Society, in their Port Huron statement a few years later.
And there was also a challenge to how America saw its role in the world.
William Appleman, Williams's book, The Tragedy of American Diplomacy, also '59. It offered this revisionist history, arguing U.S. foreign policy wasn't purely virtuous, but driven by a desire for economic control, open-door imperialism.
Controlling markets, not necessarily conquering territory.
Exactly. It challenged the whole narrative of American exceptionalism and really influenced a generation of historians, questioning the foundations.
So by the end of '59, you've got jet travel shrinking the globe, space beckoning, the nuclear threat looming, culture cracking open, society churning. It feels like everything's in motion.
A palpable sense of acceleration, yeah. The world felt smaller, faster, more connected, but also more dangerous, like the old boundaries couldn't hold.
And into this steps John F. Kennedy.
Launching his presidential campaign, late '59, early '60, with the theme of getting the country moving again.
Promising a new frontier.
Exactly. His youth, his Catholicism, his energy, it tapped into something. The nation felt ready for change, maybe needed a new direction.
A new frontier wasn't just a slogan.
No, Kaplan argues it was this powerful metaphor, breaking out of confinement, action, decision, vigor, as Kennedy put it. It resonated with that American myth of pioneering, of tackling the unknown.
Norman Mailer saw him as a kind of hero for the time.
Yeah, Mailer wrote that Kennedy could re-engage the myth of the nation, its pioneer lust for the unexpected, capturing that mood perfectly.
And his focus on space, obviously Cold War politics, played a huge role.
Oh, definitely. Lyndon Johnson's memo was blunt. First in space means first, period. Second in space is second in everything. It was absolutely about competition.
But it also represented that bold action, that forward leap.
Yes. Calculated risk, pushing boundaries. It perfectly embodied the new frontier idea, looking outwards, aiming high, whether it was the moon or fixing problems at home.
So wrapping it all up, 1959 really does feel pivotal, defined by that tension you mentioned at the start.
That push and pull between infinite possibilities and instant annihilation.
Yeah.
Whether it's art challenging taboos, science reaching for the stars and building bombs, or society grappling with deep injustices and new freedoms. Nothing seemed impossible, for good or ill.
The sources really show how that creative, maybe chaotic energy sparked in '59 just kept rippling outwards. We're still dealing with its consequences.
Absolutely. The technology we use, the ongoing fights for justice, even the way we talk about the future. You can trace so much of it back to the shifts that happened, or at least accelerated dramatically in that single year. That feeling of radical change and the anxiety that came with it,
Hmm.
it feels very familiar, doesn't it?
It really does. So maybe a final thought for you, our listeners, as you reflect on these huge shifts from 1959, think about today. How does that same tension, that mix of incredible opportunity and, frankly, peril define our current moment? And what new frontiers are we being called to navigate now in technology, in society, or maybe just in our own lives?